Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mathghamhain Morsels. This is going to be in a new series that I haven't quite thought up a name for. I will have one before this ends up popping up, so look at whatever the series title is, and isn't that a clever name for it? Yeah. Good job, future me. But this is episode 47 of Mathghamhain Morsels. And this one is just going to be how to make a grilled cheese. I'm going to make 3 different types of grilled cheese, each one a step up from the one before. So the first one is going to be the most basic grilled cheese. I don't have normal American slice cheese, so I'm instead going for a nice smokehouse cheddar. So this one, like I said, is going to be the most basic of the 3 grilled cheeses. So it's going to be a good bread and cheese, and then it's going to be buttered on the outside. So let's get some cheese on here, and I'll do 4 slices of cheese for this one. And then that's going to get closed on top. Let me make sure that I close this bread the right way. Yep, that is the right way. And then just going to use some pre-softened butter. I'm using a salted butter. You can use an unsalted butter if you so choose. But unless you're trying to watch your salt intake or something like that, there's really no point in using a unsalted in this application. The salt just makes everything taste a bit more like it should. So, butter one side. You don't want too much butter or else it gets really greasy. So flip this over and let's butter the other side of this. So like I said, this is the most basic one of the 3 that we're going to make, because this is the one that will probably look the most like what you grew up with, what pretty much everyone, at least in the United States, grows up with. So there's one. We're going to be throwing this into a cast iron skillet to do the grilling of the grilled cheese, but that's what it is right now. Then the next one is going to be a slight step up from that one. So we aren't just going to do one type of cheese, we're going to do 2 types of cheese on this one. Again, it's going to be some more of that smokehouse cheddar that I have. And just throw a couple slices of smokehouse cheddar on either side. And then I also have a really pleasant smoked Gouda that I'm going to use. So let me get a couple slices of the smoked Gouda. This Gouda likes to stick together and kind of crumble a bit more, so this will not be a perfect, beautiful slice like the smoked cheddar was. Instead, parts of it are just going to crumble off, and I'll have to throw those on as they do. Like I said, this cheese is not the best at sticking together. Well, in a slice, it sticks together beautifully in every other respect, which is part of the reason why it doesn't really stick together that well in a slice. Because if there's any contact of the different layers of this cheese, it will just kind of break apart and not want to come with, because it will just stick to the lower levels of the cheese. So there's one bit of this smoked Gouda. It does melt beautifully and is a absolutely delicious cheese for this. Though, which is why I'm willing to deal with how much of a pain in the ass it is. So get the other slice, which is again trying to tear up a bit. So there we go. And it tore a fair bit. Let me get a little bit more of this before I just decide, you know what? Screw it, it's good. Oops. Bit of it fell in between the bread. So there we go. Two different types of cheese that work really well together. Smoked Gouda and smoked cheddar are absolutely beautiful. They both melt fairly well, which is really what you want in a grilled cheese, or as the Commonwealth tends to call them, a toasty. So, now then, we could do this up with butter like we did before, but a trick that not a lot of people seem to know about when it comes to making an amazing grilled cheese is, rather than using butter, which can melt into the bread and become a bit oily and greasy, instead use a bit of mayo. Because mayo will do the same thing of getting the bread nice golden coloration, but it doesn't become greasy as it does. It's bit. So, again, you don't want a really heavy coating of mayo. You just want enough to do the job. That's good on that side. Let me actually move these over to a plate so that I have a bit more room to work. So it's mayoed on one side, flip it over, get some mayo on the other side. And use whatever mayo you like the most. In this case, I'm just using a Heinz mayo. It's not my favorite mayo, but it's a good mayo that does the trick. I could have also made my own mayo, as I showed you guys how to make in a earlier episode of Mathghamhain Morsels. So now, this one will be our rather decadent and dressed up grilled cheese. So, first make sure that I got the bread facing the right way so that it closes up nicely. And I do. With this, you always want to have a cheese layer before you get to a kind of wet layer. And this one is going to have a wet layer, because I have a couple of delicious ingredients for this one. So, start off with, again, some of that just smokehouse cheddar. Just do one slice on either side. And then I made some jammy onions again. I showed you guys how to make jammy onions in a previous episode of Mathghamhain Morsels. For anyone that needs a quick review, all it is onions in a pan that's a little bit too small, cramp them in so that they sweat rather than really frying off. Add some salt, add some butter, and just let them cook down. As they cook down, they'll start to caramelize. You can add a little bit of liquid to them. In this case, the liquid that I added was a little bit of just beef stock, just a splash, not much, to give it a bit of a beefy flavor. And then I also added a splash of Jameson whiskey, which goes amazing in jammy onions. And these also had some mustard mixed through. Just a good spicy brown, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's one part of dressing this grilled cheese up. The other part of dressing this grilled cheese up is... So, the middle one, I used two types of cheeses. The first one, I just used one type of cheese. This one, I have one type of cheese on so far, but I'm also going to add a blend that I personally make of 4 different types of cheddar. This is absolutely amazing. It has some smoked cheddars, some sharp cheddars, and some mild cheddars. But before I throw that on, let me just throw on these, which is some cottage bacon. If you don't have cottage bacon, don't worry about it. Use whatever type of bacon you like. This goes amazing with any type of bacon. Cottage bacon's just my preferred bacon. So this has been vacuum packed, which is why it's kind of pressed together in almost a cheese patty type deal. But this is just a shredded cheese. Here, I'll break it up with my thumb on this side. And that will melt down amazingly and just become the most sinfully indulgent, cheesy, ooey gooey goodness that you really want from a grilled cheese. And the cottage bacon, oh, that just adds an amazing smoky, meaty taste to it. Those jammy onions add a sweetness and a spiciness from the caramelized onion, and a bit of a spiciness from the brown mustard that I mixed in. You can also, if you like raw tomato, or tomato in general, you can throw in some tomato into this. I'm not really a fan of tomato slices, so I'm not going to. Just going to give this a press as it spits some of the ingredients out. But that cheese is good. That cheese is going straight into my mouth. So, again, this one is going to get that mayo on the outside, so that it doesn't get greasy, but it still gets that amazing crispy surface to the sandwich. So there's that. This is going to try to explode if I flip it normal, so let me do it the cheap way. Which is grab a plate, press the plate down, flip it over that way, and again, we want a nice crust on both sides. So let's get some more mayo and spread that on. And now this will be fantastic once it gets into a nice pan that heats up slow to give it time to let the cheese melt and let the bread get crispy. So I will join you guys in the kitchen with these 3 sandwiches and we'll toast them all up. See you in a moment. Okay, so here we are in my kitchen, and depending on how hot your pan gets and how quickly it heats up, you don't want your pan much beyond a low, medium, low, and a absolute top. I'd say probably medium, low. somewhere in there. Because if you heat it up too quick, you'll end up burning the ever-living hell out of your sandwich, rather than getting that lovely crust that we all want on the toasty. So, first in is going to go our simplest grilled cheese. Just straight into the pan. This pan I just turned on the heat, so it's going to come up to temperature slow, which will kind of help cook these exactly how I want them to be cooked. So, number 1 and number 2 just went in. I'm not quite sure that number 3 can fit in this pan. Might be able to get it, I just need to shift these 2 up. Let's see if this one can fit. If it can, beautiful. If it can't, I'll wait. But it can just barely fit. So, all 3 of the grilled cheeses are in. You want to let them come up to temperature slowly, so that you don't burn the hell out of the bottom before the cheese can start to melt. One thing that you can do to kind of help it out is you can cover it with a lid once it starts actually cooking up on the bottom, and I would recommend don't cover it with a lid until you flip it the first time. Once you flip it, you can cover it. It'll be beautiful. It'll work out just fine. If you cover it too early, then you end up steaming everything and it gets a bit awkward. So, just let these cook up. I do have a grill press in back that I've already heated up, which I will end up employing later on, most likely. Especially on our 3rd grilled cheese here, just because it's a fair bit thicker, so that added heat might be necessary. But it might not be. Just depends on how everything starts to melt, how it starts to cook, and really just how temperamental everything's feeling that day. Some days you have a really good, easy grilled cheese. Some days everything gets a bit temperamental and it doesn't want to cook up as nicely. Just trying to fold in one corner of the cheese because it sticks out a bit above the bread. The pan's starting to heat up, so this is just going to let it cook for a bit until it gets nice and brown. One thing that I forgot to mention when talking about that jammy onion sauce that I made, you can get a jar, pop it in a jar, pop it in your fridge, use it later on. You can mix up a fair bit of it all in one go and just use it here and there. You don't need to make it every time fresh. There's also pots of onion jam that you can get at certain grocery stores. You can get that if you really want to. I prefer making it myself. And again, like I said, if you do decide to throw tomato in any of these, put the tomato in between layers of cheese so that there's always a cheese-based moisture barrier between whatever wet ingredient you're using and the bread. So this is going to be a bit boring just watching these cook. So I will catch up with you guys once these are all done and show you what the result is. Okay, so here we are back at my desk with the three grilled cheeses. I can count, I promise. So up top is the buttered grilled cheese, followed by the one step up on this side. Oh, sorry, actually this is the 2 steps up. The 1 step up on this side, the 2 steps up on this side. Looking at the camera and moving the wrong hand. So, let's take a look at all of these. So, the butter one ended up with the lightest color crust, the cheese pull. Oh yeah, look at that fucking cheese pull. So this is the classic grilled cheese, just with a slightly dressed up cheese rather than American. It's good. It's a grilled cheese. But I'm not sure if you can see that. It's definitely a little bit greasy. And that's how pretty much every grilled cheese is, because of the butter. So let me quickly wipe my hands so that we can go on to grilled cheese number 2. So this was one of the 2 that used mayo rather than butter, and already you can tell that that isn't really greasy, whereas can you see the shine after I've touched the butter one versus no real shine from the mayo grilled cheese. The coloration is a bit more equal throughout. Let's tear this open. And still a nice cheese pull. Again, this is a amazingly solid grilled cheese. You can taste that there's 2 different types of cheese used in this. You get the more creamy Gouda with the bit of a sharper bite of the cheddar. Fantastic cheese combination for these. And that one, really easy to make without any issue. Again, it isn't greasy, doesn't really coat your hands. The only thing is, I'm getting kind of the crumbs of the sandwich, which is what I'm wiping off. So let's go to the really dressed up, all out. Ooh. Look at that cheese pull again. Just kind of drape that extra pulled cheese. Mmm. Mmm. This is definitely not your childhood grilled cheese. Again, it has the really consistent coloration, which is one of the nice things about the mayo. Just really well done. And again, it's not a greasy crust like you can get with the butter. The flavor of the cottage bacon and those jammy whiskey onions. God damn, it's good. This is definitely an adult's grilled cheese. It's more mature flavors, the different cheeses that I use, because it's, I think, 3 smoked cheddars from the smokehouse cheddar singles that I use to the 2 different smoked cheddars in my normal cheddar shredded mix that I make. A sharp cheddar, a mild cheddar. You get all those flavors playing off each other, none of them masking any of the others. All of them just marrying together. Just absolutely delicious. Like I said, this is an adult grilled cheese. It's not something that you'll want to make every day because it's more effort. If you're wanting a really quick grilled cheese, go for 1 or 2. The butter gets a little bit greasy. The mayo takes care of the greasiness. Doesn't get greasy, gives a more consistent crust. Absolutely fantastic. Doesn't change the flavor. You don't get a mayo flavor from using the mayo like this. It's just the fat that you use in order to crisp up your bread nicely. But if you want a more decadent grilled cheese, this one's fantastic. And you can make versions of this with whatever you want. Rather than using cottage bacon, use normal bacon. Or just throw in ham, make it a hot ham and cheese rather than this. Or you can use whatever else you have to hand. It's just good. It's classic, simple, comfort food. And that's what makes it amazing. You can't really bite into a grilled cheese without remembering your childhood and kind of being tossed back into it. Especially if you have a big bowl of tomato soup with it. Or some ketchup to dip your grilled cheese in. But at this point, I think I'll sign off and let you guys be. So again, we'll just leave off with my standard. Try new things, try new flavors, return to old classics, dress them up, dress them down, make twists on them. Have fun cooking. Enjoy your food, enjoy your life, and I'll see you all later. Have a good one all.